Let's look at tables in a little more detail. So I'm inside base. I'm still using my Derby Tours database.odb file. And I've clicked on or selected tables as the database object I'm interested in. Here are all the tables in this particular database, and you can see there's quite a few of them. I have selected TBL cities to take a look at. Over here I get a quick glance at what that table looks like, but I want to see more detail, so I'm going to double click on it. And here I see, oops, popped into the back. Here I see the data view of that table. All right, here's the name of the table, TBL cities, so I can remember. There's the name of the database at the top here. And I notice it has 5 fields. 3 of them are ID fields. And we'll talk about that more in the next chapter. This field, city name, has a bunch of names of cities. Gee, that makes sense. And here must be the major language of those cities. So that's the information in this table. And if I scroll, I see there are quite a few records. However, I have to count them one by one to tell how many there are from this particular view of the data. I'm going to close that and go back to the main area of base. This time I'm going to look at the same table, but I'm going to look at it from a design or edit view so I can see what the structure is, how it was set up when it was created. And there's the 5 field names: city ID, country ID, map ID. Those are the 3 ID fields. And then we have city name and language. And notice all of these have a type. For instance, city name is type text, which is also called varchar, meaning it can be numbers or letters or semicolons, things like that, anything from your keyboard. However, if you put a number in this field, for instance, you lived in the weird city of number 1, it would not be treated as a number if it has this type. It would be treated as the character 1, so you couldn't use it in any math. And that's usually what you do with a zip code, because text takes up less space in your computer's memory than numbers do. Another interesting thing here is, excuse me, while I have this picked, look on the bottom here, and you can see this is an area called Field Properties. This is where I can set more specific guidelines as to how this particular field should be used in the database, in this table. So here I can say, yes, they have to put in a city name, as opposed to no, they can skip that field. The maximum length will be 24 characters. That's something I decided on. I might put a default value in there, so if they didn't type anything, it would automatically put in Omaha, for example. And here is a format example. This is not being used in the case of the city name, but we'll see some examples of this being used elsewhere. Description is where I can write what city ID is. This is the automatic ID number given to a city by the computer, which I happen to know that's what this is. These notes or descriptions in a real database, we won't see any in this pretend database, but in a real database, those would always be filled in because you might forget what that is 3 years down the road when you come to work on it. So I'm going to close that. I'm not going to save changes. And now I want to look at table flights. And I want to see how this one's set up. I can see that this is the kind of data it has. There's some ID numbers. Segment must be a leg, like the first leg or the second leg of a multi-stop flight. But let's look at how it was structured or set up when it was made. The interesting thing here that I wanted to show you was look at depart time. Okay, and it says entries not required. There's no default value. However, there is a format. All the times are going to show in this format. And if I wanted to change that, I could pick this ellipse, it's called, and I could come down to time, and these are all the standard type formats I could pick from. This is actually the coding for it. If this wasn't here and letting me pick, I'd have to manually put this in. But luckily, I don't have to remember that. I can just pick this example of that format and say, okay, and all the numbers in that field will be of that format. Let's go back and take a look. So let's see, I'll open this up in data view. It always pops to the back. Here we go, departure time, and there's the format you can see. And it changed to PM when it was 12 p.m. And one last thing I would show you is if we go back to the cities and back to the edit view so I can see how it was set up, I'm going to go to the language. And when I'm setting this up, I had a lot of different choices here from this drop down as to what type of data could be entered in that field. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. We'll talk more about that later.